Welcome to an episode of Editing with John. I don't know if this is going to be an official series on this channel or if this is going to be a one-time thing. I haven't done a video like this, like an editing walkthrough, in a very long time, but because of my recent collaboration with Dehancer, I figured, it might be worth doing a sort of screen recording tutorial style video where I walk you through my editing workflow with Dehancer in this case. If you don't know what Dehancer is a editing plugin for different apps, whether it's photo or video. In this case, I'm going to be using Lightroom, but they have other, editing programs like Capture One that they're, able to be used with. Same thing with video. I use them for DaVinci Resolve, but you can also use them with Premiere Pro and other video editing software. One of the biggest benefits or features of Dehancer is that it has film simulations or film emulations built into the program, as well as other options or features that help you manipulate your digital files similar to film. And even if you don't want to use the term film-like or compare these digital files to film, which I completely understand if you don't, the editing workflow, regardless of that, and the results that you can get, in my opinion, are really good. I obviously love the way film looks. It's part of the reason why I shoot, color film and black and white film both. But sometimes, just practicality-wise, it's easier for me to shoot digital a lot of the time, and so I don't want there to be a compromise between the final result and the result I get with film. So hopefully with Dehancer, I'll be able to bridge that gap. So I figured in this video, I will just do a editing walkthrough of how I use Dehancer. I've been using Dehancer now for about 3 weeks for both photo and video. We're gonna talk about photo here, but this past weekend was Super Saturday here in Chinatown. I live in Chinatown. And Super Saturday is a annual celebration that marks the end of Lunar New Year, I believe. I will put a link down below with more information if you're interested about Super Saturday and sort of Lunar New Year in Chinatown. But it's a day of celebration, a lot of lion dances, a lot of firecrackers. I got hit in the face by a firecracker this year. And then just for context, I did shoot on Saturday with the Ricoh GR3. I got the Diary Edition recently, so I used this with the Lightpix Labs Q20, Mark II, which has been awesome as well. And this combo is great. One thing I will say is I'm still learning Dehancer, and also for me, editing is not super technical. I don't necessarily care about the definitions of what different things do. I just care about how they make my image look. And so there's a chance that as I talk through the edits, maybe my vocabulary isn't that, technical. Just bear with me. If you want to correct me with something, go ahead and leave a comment and correct me. But besides that, just, look at the photo, look at what I do, and enjoy editing with me. And I hope it is useful for you. And if you are interested in getting Dehancer or trying out Dehancer, I do have an affiliate code with them. It is JFern, and with that code, if you use it at checkout, you can get 10% off your license. I don't think that applies to the mobile app, but yeah, just use code JFern and it supports me. You get a little discount and I would greatly appreciate it. So enjoy the rest of the video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. On our way to 2,000 subscribers this year, hopefully. So yeah, enjoy. So we'll go ahead and jump into the edits for the day. I've already gone in. I think I took about maybe 700 photos or something like that. I ended up selecting here. I have 356. I'm gonna select it down when I start editing all of them. But right now I do have all the primary selections, and then I kind of selected some in yellow as well. The way I do my selections, I feel like a lot of people do this, is I just mark, using 6 is for red, 7 is for yellow, 8 is for green. Those are usually the 3 colors I use. 6 is for my selections. 7 in this case I'm using because these are the ones that I think might be interesting to edit with you today. And then when I'm done and it's final and it's ready for export, I use green to label it, and then I can use the filters here to kind of go through the different groupings as I want to. I'm gonna go ahead and start with this photo. I think most of the photos I selected, we're not gonna go through all of them today. I think maybe we'll go through 5 different photos today, but the ones that I selected to edit with you now are more so less about the photo or how good the photo is, more so about kind of seeing how Dehancer is going to handle different lighting situations and different types of photos. There's a few photos that I'm kind of happy about on the day. I think maybe I might show them, you know, at some point in this video. Maybe I won't. This photo I think is okay. I got a few of these photos of like these people looking on towards the chaos while they were standing in front of this market. I didn't quite get what I wanted to get, but I got, you know, at least it's somewhat interesting with these 3 subjects and then this 4th one in the background, and they're kind of separated and spaced out, and I think the lighting on their faces are pretty nice, which is actually what first drew me. Well, the first thing that drew me was this guy with his beard, which I wish I got his face better, but it is what it is. So we'll go ahead and start this one. So when you do want to open dehancer, hopefully you can see this with OBS. I'm not 100% sure if you can, but what you're gonna do is go up to your sort of top toolbar at the very top of your screen when you're in Lightroom, hit photo, and then you're gonna hit edit in dehancer Lightroom plugin. There's also a shortcut. I don't use it, but you can if you want. You're gonna edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. And if you by any chance hear a little bit of a whistling in the microphone, it's because the radiator is on because it is winter and my radiator whistles all the time. So I do apologize if you hear that in the background. But here we are in dehancer. And so kind of one of the first things I do when I'm starting off a edit is instead of going through the film profiles here on the left-hand side, I first go to the settings that I know I am going to include, and I'll explain why in a second. So usually on every photo, for the most part, I am always doing film compression, print, film grain, and bloom. Those are the main settings I do use, and I'll also just toss in film developer. This isn't going to really affect it right away unless you adjust these values. But film compression, the print, especially if you choose any of these other ones, which I tend to like the Kodak 2383 print film, but that's going to affect the photo. As you can see, we're not even like editing the photo yet, and as I change these values, the photo itself changes, and so, you know, just keep that in mind. Then the film grain, I do like to add. I tend to kind of hover around the 250 to 500 mark, especially if I'm thinking about like Instagram, especially the way I post on Instagram, it is just going to compress the files quite a bit. And so you're not going to see the grain so much. And so I'm sure if I printed these, you know, you would see the grain a little bit more. Since I'm not printing them, I'm going to see them a little bit less. So I don't mind going up to sort of that 500 ASA film grain. And then bloom, I tend to put bloom on all of my digital files, and I really been enjoying it. You know, it's definitely personal preference. So the reason why I do this before going into the film profiles on the left is this is all going to affect the photo before you put on the film profile. So if you put on the film profile first, what ends up happening is as you change those values on the right, the photo is going to drastically change the way it looks. And so I kind of rather get those base settings first, even if it's in the ballpark and not 100% what the final product is gonna be. And then I'll go into film profile and start looking at the film profiles. So jumping over to already, and like it's funny, like already without even using the film profile. Again, this is also testament to the Ricoh GR3, which I did, I don't know if I said it earlier, but I did shoot all these photos on the Ricoh GR3. I have the diary edition, and a lot of these were also shot on a flash using the Lightpix Labs flash that I also absolutely love. But you know, Ricoh already has great colors. Even like the raw files already look really good, and just even without using the film profiles on the left hand side here, the film emulations, I think this photo already looks much better. Great, so let's go ahead and jump over to the film profiles. Once we select the film profile, as you can see, it's already affecting the image. So whatever is highlighted is, you know, what's gonna appear on your edit. To be honest, I usually skip over, you know, so far, usually what I do is I skip over a lot of them and go straight to the ones that I kind of like to use and see what I can find. Obviously, these thumbnails help, even though they are small. You know, you're kind of able to get like a pretty quick glance of what it might end up looking like. The ones I really like are surprisingly Kodak Color Plus. I think works really well. Sometimes Aero Color works really well. Same thing with Ektachrome. I've actually probably used Ektachrome the most out of all of the film profiles, and I also like the Ektar occasionally. But really, a lot of the Kodak ones are good as well. So I think here, I'm just going to click around and see which one I like the best. And a lot of this really is going to come down to a lot of personal preference. But honestly, I think Ektachrome looks really good here. And I can go through and, continue to click and find something that works well. But I think I might stick with that Ektachrome one. I really like the saturation that Ektachrome has. If you kind of look at the Portrait 800 here, it tends to look flatter when you just apply it. Obviously, you can make changes afterwards. Same thing with the Portrait 400, but I think the Ektachrome is a really good starting point. Great. Now moving back over to the right-hand side here, you have kind of I honestly don't use these as much. These are kind of like very overall, like corrections and values. They don't really affect the image, I think, in my opinion, a little bit too much. The temperature control here is good. I might cool this down just a little bit, and I might add a little bit of magenta or green, or just leave it right in the middle. I tend to like to have some green in my photos, especially in my film photos. The way I scan, I like to leave a little bit of green, and so when I'm thinking about my digital photos, sometimes I want to match those film photos as well. But to me, this is looking really good. And also up here, if you want to kind of see a before and after, here you can see it pretty easily. And after seeing this before and after, I think I kind of prefer the warmer tones and not having the green so much in this photo. So I think I might actually leave the temperature and see before and after here. And I like that. I think I might still cool it down a little bit. And I think that looks pretty good right now. Moving on to the film developer, the contrast boost is pretty much that, is a contrast, and it's like pretty intense contrast in my opinion. Like if you take it all the way, it's quite a bit. I might add a little bit just to kind of separate some of the shadows in the background to the subjects in the foreground. Great. And then moving on to the film developer section, like I said earlier, this section, the film developer area, only changes if you change the values. To be totally honest, the only ones I used here are contrast boost, which adds, in my opinion, is a nice way to add contrast to the photo. And I'm going to add some here just to kind of separate the shadows in the background to the foreground. And the color boost also works pretty well. Just a little subtle saturation increase, I think, works well. The film compression, this is one of my favorite features so far of dehancer. It's kind of hard to explain. In that last video that I made when I was talking about dehancer, I kind of like explain it as just like the highlight roll off is like more film like, and making that comparison is hard because film is really good with that highlight roll off. But as you can see in this photo, if I uncheck it, you just kind of see how much brighter some of the highlights are, especially on the apron in this menu back here. When I select it, it just kind of brings I would say like the highlight tone curve down a bit and really flattens out the highlight quite a bit. And you can change how much this is affected. And usually I like to bump this up pretty far, unless there's a reason why I want like a really like bright, intense highlight. And then if you even want to go further with it, you can adjust the white point and make it even flatter if you would like. And then moving over to expand, honestly, I don't use this all that much. When I do use this, it's really to lift my shadows. If I want to lift them, I don't want to lift them here, so I'm just going to leave this alone. Like I said earlier, print, I already selected this beforehand. I can go ahead and kind of see what the other ones look like now. And because I've already made so many changes, the other ones don't look as good because I made the changes to this specific print. So I do recommend, before you start making changes above and also on the film profile side, to decide what print print style you're going to use. And then here you can also adjust the white balance or the target white of the photo. And this is a much more subtle change. You can also do exposure, tonal contrast, which is another good place to add contrast, and then color density, which is kind of like a luminance, if you will, in my opinion. As you can see, if you see the blue on the left side here, it is adding saturation, but it's also like just decreasing. You see it in the scarf as well, decreasing and increasing the luminance of the red and kind of like just the density of the color. There is also the color head option, which I'm not going to use here, but if I wanted to, if I wanted to maybe take away some of the warm tones and go bluer, I could. If I wanted to take away some of the magenta and go green, I could. Same thing with cyan and red. But, for right now, I think this photo is already looking good enough, so I'm going to leave that alone completely. Again, the film grain, you can uncheck it and check it. I like it. there's not much to it. It's film grain. I think the film grain and dehancer, like I said in like one of my past videos, the film grain and dehancer works really well. I think it looks, especially on color files, looks much more natural and much more like my film scans than adding grain in Lightroom. I've seen it described online as a lot of grain. Like when you use grain in Lightroom, it's pretty monochromatic, but in dehancer, they have some sort of algorithm or something that essentially makes the grain colored grain, chromatic grain, and it just makes it look more natural and more like film, because on film, obviously the grain is not monochromatic when it comes to color film, at least. And then just so you guys can see the halation, which I know is a kind of popular tool, I don't tend to use it all the time. Definitely not when I have like human subjects for the most part. But as you can see, here's the with halation and then before halation. And I'm not going to add halation to this. And then again, I can show you the bloom setting, and this is definitely stylized. Some people don't like having the bloom on the highlights, especially on the faces here of the subjects. It's like pretty intense, but in my opinion, I think it just like adds a little bit more character to the photo. And if for whatever reason you want to add film damage, you can. I never, use this, and I think there's probably different settings you can use and whatnot, and you can kind of randomize it, but I'm not going to use that. That could be cool maybe for like a stylistic thing if you're like doing some like branded work or something, but for my photos, I'm not going to do that. You can also do an overscan, which if you want to add the sprocket holds, you can, and there's a ton of different settings for that. I never scan with sprocket holds. If you want to, you definitely could though. So I have no need for that. And there's also vignetting, which you can just do within dehancer, which is nice, which I'm not going to use now. But yeah, and then once you hit OK in dehancer, you get a copy automatically saved to your Lightroom. And if you want to, kind of make further changes from here, you definitely can. If you want to add sharpening or anything like that, but if you zoom in here, one thing I do want to show is kind of how the film grain looks. I think like this is a really good example of like adding film grain and just really adding that texture that film has. I think like this photo does a really good job of showing like what film grain can do. And honestly, I actually might sharpen. I'm curious to see what happens if I sharpen this image a little bit. So I'm going to go down and just increase the sharpening. And as you can see, it's like now the grain's kind of starting to look a little bit like too sharp. So then what I'm going to do is hit mask, hit the option key on my Mac. And that looks pretty good, but I'm going to hide it. And so we can see a before and after, and it really doesn't make that much of a difference. But especially if we look at the eyes over here, this man's like right eye or left eye, this is before. You can see a little bit of that blur. If I hit after, it's a little bit more sharp. And so I think overall, I think that helps, especially when you think about like somebody viewing this on Instagram, really small. I think probably won't make that big of a difference, but if it was printed and blown up, then it would definitely help a little bit. And so I think that looks pretty good. And so when I'm ready to export this, I would just, do a normal Lightroom export and it's good to go. But let's go ahead and move on to the next photo. So this is another photo I wanted to edit, and the reason why is, as you can see, the background is completely blown out, the sky is, and I was using a flash here. You can actually see my flash in his eyes, which is cool, but he is exposed properly. So I just kind of wanted to see, I don't think it's like a great photo or anything like that, but I just kind of wanted to see how it would act in dehancer. It might come out good, it might not come out good, so we'll see. So before I go in, I'm just gonna see if I can save any of these highlights, and I definitely cannot, but if I do decrease the highlights, you do see some of this confetti in the background. So I might actually leave it like that. And I'm curious if I just bring down exposure. Yeah, you can see like these whites are completely clipped. So that is definitely not going to be saved. With the Ricoh GR, the shadow detail that you can save is incredible, but with the highlights, definitely not. That's why I always tell people I recommend shooting, if you're shooting in like an automatic mode, is shoot with highlight weighted metering on, meaning you're going to save your highlights and crush your shadows, but you can save, like, the dynamic range on this camera in the shadows is ridiculous. So I think I'm gonna leave the photo like this. Maybe I'll bring up the shadows a little bit and just bring down the blacks just a touch to just kind of get him, just kind of focused on him and the exposure there. But I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead, edit in dehancer. And I'm gonna show you one thing that happens, which I don't know if there's like a setting that can fix this or not, but as you can see, the photo is edited the same way as the previous photo. This could be good or bad. So what happens is when you kind of hit OK from your previous photo and you go and you open dehancer for another photo, the settings from the previous edit stays, which could be a bad thing, could be a good thing. If you're editing a sequence of photos that all need the same edit, that works out really well. You can also like copy and paste, I'm pretty sure. But in this case, I don't want to use the same exact edit. So what I have to do is then hit this little stop button, which is reset all settings to default, which something I haven't messed with is the presets tab. So I believe you can create your own presets, which is something I'm definitely going to start doing soon. So that way, let's say I'm editing a event like this or like a wedding where a lot of the exposure or subject matter is the same, then I could probably create a preset and just, use that preset for that sequence of photos, and then also maybe in the future as well. So yeah, for the rest of these edits, I'm going to just kind of try to fly through them and talk my way through them. Again, like I said, always start on the right side here, film compression, the print. I think I am going to also use print film here. Actually, let me not use print film here just because the contrast might be a little too much, especially with these blown out highlights. So I'm going to use the Kodak Endura glossy paper. Then I will add some film grain, make sure that is 250 like it was before, some bloom. I'm not going to use halation on this one, and that looks good. And then I'm just going to go ahead and skim through some of these color profiles or film emulations. And like for this one, I really don't have a direction I want to take this. It's more so like just kind of seeing what we can kind of get out of it. And so that's what we're going to do. So right now I think I like Aero Color a lot. Ektachrome is a little too warm on his face. Ektar is okay. Ektar 25 is okay. Gold 200 is okay. Don't like Kodachrome. Vivid Color 160, no. Neutral Color, no. The Portras, no. Kodak 100, no. Super 100, no. Visions, no. Vision 3, no. They also have Lomochrome on here, so if you ever wanted to experiment with Lomochrome Metropolis or Lomochrome Purple, now's your chance. I actually think this, which I'm going to be completely honest, I have never heard of Procudin Gorkasi 1906 experimental. I have no idea what film this is. Let me know down below if you do, but I actually think this one might be my favorite. Let me see. I'm going to compare this one and Aero Color. Was it Aero Color I liked? Or was it Ektar? Yeah, I think it was Aero Color or Ektachrome. Ektachrome is actually pretty good. I just think he's a little bit too warm. I think between Ektachrome and Aero Color, I actually might prefer the Ektachrome, but I'm going to compare Ektachrome now to this random one, Procudin. I think I'm going to go Ektachrome on this one. So there you go. I selected Ektachrome, and we can just already see a before and after, and it really is a minor subtle change, but I think so far it looks pretty good. So I don't think I'm actually going to touch anything in the film developer, just because I don't want to mess with the exposure too much, because I think the exposure I have already is like fine. What I am going to mess with is the film compression, specifically to see how it's going to affect my sky here. And so definitely want to add some of the film compression, definitely want to make the impact greater. And I think this is where like this tool comes really in handy. if I wanted to maybe show that the sky was like blown out and it's just like a bright highlight on the rest of my frame and, you know, whatever, it's just in the background, I can just lower this white point and it'll do that. As you can see, it's like pretty much expanding the highlight throughout like the buildings back here and everything. But if I bring it back to the middle and then I bring it the other way, I can pretty much show that the highlight was, you know, clipped and there's no detail in the sky. However, I think this is kind of pleasing because it does show a little bit of that film grain, and it also reveals a lot of that confetti that's flying in the background. So even though the sky is, you know, blown out and there's no detail, there's still information there that makes this photo, or helps tell the story of this photo a little bit more. And I think I am going to add some color density in the print just to add some more saturation to this without affecting too much of the exposure, but just a little bit, because since he's already in the shadow, like underneath his own shadow here, I feel like he's already like oversaturated, if that makes sense. But kind of for the rest of the frame, I wanted to add it a little bit. I'm not going to do anything with color head. Again, I think the film grain works well here. I might bump this up to 500. And I actually think like the 500 just gives it a really pleasing look, especially again in like the background and in the highlights and the yellow on his sleeve and everything. I'm gonna look at halation one more time, but I definitely don't want to add it. And bloom, I definitely want to keep it. And I think that's good for this photo again. And that is the before, and this is the after. Again, personal preference with how you want to edit it, but personally to me, I like the way this looks. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. And then I think once again, I wanna kind of look at it in Lightroom and see if there's anything else I wanna do. I'm curious about what happens if I bring the highlights up here. And again, what's happening is as I'm bringing up the highlights, you're kind of losing some of these confetti. I'll go back to normal, and some of the film grain. And this is actually a good example. If you can see how like the film grain from dehancer is RGB or it is colored. It's not just monochromatic. So I think I'm gonna bring up the highlights just a little bit, but not too much. And let me look at the shadows. Maybe I'll bring the shadows up just a tad. I think that looks pretty good. And then once again, I am going to up the sharpening. And so I may actually just zoom in on this subject's face. Use the masking once again. And really, I'm just trying to bring sharpness to areas like the eyes and corners and edges of different things. So that is before sharpening, that's after sharpening. It's literally the most subtle change, but I think it makes a big difference in some cases. And yeah, I think this photo looks pretty good. Again, I don't think it's like a great photo or anything like that, but as far as like editing with dehancer, I think, you know, it does look pretty good. And something that like I kind of mentioned in like the past video I did is that, you know, I could get here in Lightroom. It's not like I'm doing anything crazy with dehancer that is like out of this world or anything like that, but it's more so the ease of use and the consistency of using dehancer for my digital workflow is really beneficial for me. And it would just take me a lot more work and like fine tuning in Lightroom to get here. And to be honest, I don't really enjoy editing digital files all that much, but with dehancer, I do enjoy it quite a bit more. Great, and we'll go ahead and do one more photo for this edit, but at the end of the video, I am going to include some of the other photos I got, you know, on this day and that I edited. So let me just go ahead and select which one I want to do. This is actually really funny, or it's not that funny, but I went inside. Sometimes on Super Saturday, it's like difficult to follow the lions into the businesses when, you know, they go in, and obviously that's like a fun angle to get. And I was actually taking a break and in one of the bakeries that I, you know, semi-frequent if I want to get like sweet buns or pork buns or anything like that. And as I was in there, the line ended up coming in. And so I did get some of these photos. I'm not going to edit these now. I don't think they're that great. This is probably the best one of the bunch, just because at least like the line's looking at me and, you know, the fan is open. I can see like sort of people in the background. But yeah, that was fun. And then after this, I had a sweet bun in my hand and I was taking a break next to this other business. And then I realized that there was a lion inside. And so I got kind of stuck, not stuck. Yeah, I was pretty much stuck against this like railing, like over here next to like this other photographer. And we were kind of just like snapping away while they were just dancing in front of us. And we got some pretty good, or at least I got some pretty good shots here. And it's funny because I was like taking all these photos with one hand using my GR3, which is the best one-handed shooting camera. And in my other hand, I was literally eating a sweet bun and it was awesome. And I got like crumbs all over me. But yeah, I think some of these photos are pretty good. And so I might edit one of these. I like this photo a lot just because you know, see the eye of the masked person. And then this is her like masked off smiling, which is like super, super nice because I think they knew I was just snapping away photos of them. But I think I'm going to edit. There was one photo I did like because I just filled the frame literally completely. And I got, you know, this guy's eye in this loop and it's like a semi-interesting frame. And I wish I could see her eye, but I also think it's like kind of mysterious since I can't see her eye. And I think it's also interesting. She's like taking the mask off and I don't know, it's kind of cool. So I'll go ahead and edit this one. I'm going to bump the shadows up first just to kind of correct the exposure a little bit. Maybe bring the highlights in the background down a little bit, but that looks pretty good. Again, this was flash and I'm glad my flash, you know, didn't cast too much of a shadow on his face here. So that's good. Go ahead and open dehancer. I'm going to reset my settings. And as always, I'm going to hit film compression, print, which I think for this one, I will do the 2383 print film grain, and bloom. And already, like, it's funny, like, especially with this print option, like the 2383 Kodak print film, it already makes like such a difference in the way it looks, and I kind of really like it, especially with the film grain. But you know, we're gonna keep going. But I'm gonna hit my film profile here and just go ahead and walk through and see which one I like the best. I think Ektachrome looks really good. I think Ektachrome might be my favorite out of all of them right now. So. And I think it's really just because it's like so saturated because it's Ektachrome. I think the color is a little off. So I think I will probably end up changing or, you know, manipulating the colors a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to do anything to the actual source image. Let's see, film developer. Let's see how contrast boost looks. And I think I could add a little bit of contrast just because I like the way the detail and like the different shadows being casted in here. I really like. But I do think there's maybe this image might be a little bit too saturated. So if I pull back color boost, what does that do? So I think I will leave. I do think the photo is a little bit too saturated, so I'm curious if I bring down the color density, what that does. And it doesn't really do anything to most of the image. Let me see where else. If I decrease saturation in the print, I don't want to do too much, so I might go just type in 90 and then add color density, and let's see, no. But if I go up to color boost, I don't like that either. And I think 90 is a little bit too little. So I'll go up to 95 and I think that looks pretty good. I might adjust the saturation afterwards in Lightroom, but we'll see. But right now, film compression, impact, again, I'm gonna bring that up a little bit and I think that looks good. Really the only place that this is affecting is like up here and maybe the teeth. Yeah, it's kind of affecting here on the left side as well, but I think that looks good. So if I go to expand, I think I am going to use, I'm just going to lift up the black point a little bit. I'm kind of looking at my histogram here and I really want to like bring this up a little bit. So this is kind of before and this is lifting it up. And I think that looks pretty good and more film-like in my opinion. And then looking at the print film here, I think I do want tonal contrast. And I think one of the issues I'm running into here is like the exposure on this side of the image is so different from the exposure of this side of the image. So I'm just gonna add a little bit. I'm gonna adjust the target white to just cool it down a little bit, or maybe quite a bit. And then here, there's a photo where I will probably go in and use the color head, because there's something about the colors in this photo that I don't like. There is a lot of color, but something about sort of like the tones, especially on like the left side of the photo here, I just like don't like. So I'm gonna see if I take away a little bit of the yellow and add some blue, and then you can see it's becoming a little bit magenta. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some green. It's looking a little bit better. This is before, this is after. Really, the cooling it down did help quite a bit. And let me see what happens if I add some red. Or go more cyan and cool it down a bit. So that's probably a little bit too much. See, now like inside of here, it's looking a little bit too cool. So I think I'm gonna bring that back to 0. Go back towards yellow a little bit. And I think that is looking much better. I think the big thing for me was like the left side of the image here. It does look a little cool, again, underneath, the lion's head. But I think the portion where his like mouth is looks much better than before. So this is before. You can see like this is all like a little, I don't know, it's like a really warm cast. But with the color head and just, pushing it a little bit cooler with the blue, I think that looks pretty good. So I still think the underneath the lion's head, something about the color there doesn't look right to me. I'm gonna go to the midtones. I think they should be midtones and push it to the right, warm it up a little bit, and I think that looks pretty good. I think the highlights to me are a little too warm now. Specifically, again, like on the lion's mouth. And so if I push the highlights to the left, that's too far, but I do think that looks better. Yeah, I think that looks much better. And I actually think like the color contrast now is like pretty nice. See what happens if I play with the shadows. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And this is looking pretty good. Film grain, I think I might leave at the 250. Yeah, I'll leave it at 250 since we're so close to the subject's face. Halation, I'm just gonna leave it off. I don't think I'm gonna use much halation for this day, and I'm not gonna add any vignettes. Little before and after. This one's definitely a little bit much more stylized, but I like it. I think the original file is definitely cleaner, and I think if I would adjust instead of using the 2383 paper, I could use the Kodak glossy paper, and I think this would make it look a little bit cleaner, but I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to keep it on the print film. So this is it with the glossy paper. This is it with the print film. And honestly, I may actually prefer the glossy paper. I'm going to do 2 exports, one with the glossy paper, one with the 2383 print film. And this one's more stylized. The other one's a little bit cleaner. You get to pick which one you like better. I'm not sure. I'll decide later. And once again, I am going to add some of that sharpening. And you can add quite a bit, to be honest, and just mask away. And already, I think that looks much better. So I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial and walkthrough. This isn't the first time I do a Lightroom like tutorial talking head computer thing like this. I think I did a super whack one years ago. But if you're interested in me doing more things like this, let me know. I think I kind of learned sort of talking through the edits a little bit more. I kind of learn more, I feel. Usually when I edit, I'm just like, churning away and moving sliders around. But if I talk through them, hopefully that helps me develop more of a vocabulary when it comes to editing, and especially in dehancer, which, like I said before, I'm not just saying this. I know everyone says this. I'm not saying this just because I have the affiliate code. I really do enjoy using dehancer for editing color, digital work. If you follow me on Instagram and you ever see me post some color digital work from the GR3 or my X-H2S or whatever it might be, if it's color, it's probably going to be edited in dehancer. Once again, thank you to dehancer. You can use code JFern for 10% off your dehancer products, except the mobile app, which I will probably make a video. I haven't used it yet. I'm gonna use it at some point and make a video in the future talking about the mobile app to see maybe it can fit into my workflow, maybe not. But if you do want to try out dehancer for either Lightroom or video editing on Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, whatever it is. Also, if you want to use Capture One or other photo editing software, click the link below and use the code JFern for 10%. It does help support me, which is greatly appreciated. But I'm going to conclude the video here. Let me know which photo in this video was your favorite photo. Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.